Source is a podcast made by women for women. We talk with a wide variety of experts, ranging from a sex therapist to the CDC and everywhere in between, to bring you the stories you're only going to hear here. Our goal is to entertain and educate, because it's more clear now than ever just how much we as women are doing, as parents, as spouses, employees, just as everything. Don't miss out on being in the know. Subscribe to Soul Source wherever you listen to podcasts today. Leave us a review too, because this part's really important. When you leave those reviews, that's how we're able to continue bringing you the content you love each and every week. So buckle up, Soul Source Society, because we're about to get started.
It's always worth it to speak up.
Hello, everybody. I'm your host of Soul Source, Raquel Lamel, and my guest this week is a very interesting woman. She's sharing her story about working with some of the richest people in the world, how men of power have tried to take advantage of her, and how she stood up to them. And she's now helping women get wealthy while also helping others gain the courage to speak up against powerful people. Kaitlyn Carlson is the founder and CEO of Theory Planning Partners, a company aimed at helping women business owners build professional wealth alongside the growth of their companies. She knows her stuff when it comes to money too. Carlson is a certified financial planner, a certified exit planning advisor, and an accredited wealth management advisor. Kaitlyn, welcome to Soul Source.
Thank you, Raquel. That was such an amazing intro. It's so nice to be here.
It's so true. Those are all things that you're doing and that you currently do. So this is exciting to have you here on the show, because you're a cool ass lady. So let's start off. I mentioned briefly that you've started your own company, but why did you do that? You can tell that story much better than me. How'd you go from employee to boss, and why?
So my 20s were interesting. They were a lot about developing professionally, but they were also a lot about developing personally. And as you mentioned, I went into finance, which is an extremely male-dominated industry nationally, but especially in the South, which is where I entered wealth management. And during my time with the bank that I was at, I just happened to notice that I was pretty much only surrounded by male colleagues when it came to mentors or people that I looked up to in terms of a career path. And I did 300 financial plans while I was with this wealth management firm, and not one of them was for a self-made woman.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Wow, that had to be shocking.
It was wrong when I came to the realization that that was true. I wanted to do something about it. So there are a lot of motivations from my experiences in wealth management that led me to eventually decide to go out onto my own. I would say I was more pushed into entrepreneurship than called to entrepreneurship, but I am so grateful for the push. So.
And what was kind of that push factor? What was really what pushed you into being your own boss?
So we can get into this, but I did not have a great experience at the firm that I was at in terms of having to deal with a lot of sexual harassment while I was there. And so much so that I'm originally from the Boston area. And I was working in New Orleans at the time. And when I was in New Orleans, it just got to be so much that I couldn't handle working there anymore. And I went to the bank and I requested that they moved us home. So I ended up staying within the bank to make the move back to Boston. I joined a private wealth management team up in the Boston area, and they ended up leaving the bank and going out on their own to what's known as a registered investment advisor. So I left the bank with them. It felt like the right time, because I just felt like, given my history with the firm, that I couldn't be there anymore. It was just a toxic place for me to be. So I left with that team. But I was still wrestling with everything that I had been through. I almost felt like I was jumping from burning platform to burning platform. And I was not in the right headspace. I came home and had more stuff going on personally with my family. And when that team left, they went to a place that geographically was just really tough for me to get to. And they brought on a couple other partners. So that culture shifted a bit from what I had originally signed up for, and just ultimately didn't end up being a good fit. So I thought about, once I was introduced to the independent path, I thought this might be something that I want to pursue on my own. And I actually had a former colleague reach out when he saw that I had gone the independent route and said he had just started an RIA and wondered if I would be interested in partnering. So he and I actually ended up partnering. So I kind of took baby steps into entrepreneurship. And I love him. We're still great friends to this day. But it was funny. We spent about a year together running the RIA, and I ended up falling in love with business ownership, and he ended up falling out of love with business ownership.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he was always more interested he really likes following stocks and managing portfolios. And it worked better for him to have support around his passion. And so he actually ended up going back to one of the they're called wirehouses. So he ended up going back to, and I ended up starting Theory. We kind of arrived at the decision at the same time. At the time, we were serving both men and women, but I was really developing a sharp passion for working exclusively with women. And that vision became clearer and clearer to me as his desire to get out of business ownership became clear and clear to him. So we had an amicable split, and I started Theory Planning Partners in April of 2020. So basically right in the middle of the pandemic.
Oh my goodness. You just gave me so much to unpack there, Kaitlyn. Holy cow. We're going to start with the assault that you said you dealt with at work. And then we're going to get into the financial piece that you're doing and the way you're helping women today. But I want to start with that piece because that was really kind of a catalyst that, like you said, pushed you into just something completely different. So what happened? Start there. Tell us what happened there.
So I started in the investment industry on the asset management side, and I was part of a management rotational program for 2 years. And I actually met my now husband at that firm, and we were relocated to New Orleans for him to take this job. And when he accepted that offer, I decided to make the move from asset management to wealth management. And I was very deliberate about the firm that I chose because I knew the industry extremely well. And I felt like I could develop a real career there, and I felt aligned with the values and everything. Unfortunately, my very first week starting with that firm, I was sexually harassed by a 68-year-old financial advisor who had been at the firm for 15 years. And I almost feel grateful that it was so short. It happened over the course of really my first week there. So I started on a Tuesday, and I was a financial planner at the time. So my job was to go around and build relationships with the financial advisors in the office because I was going to be doing financial plans for their clients. So this man saw me come into the office, go through my onboarding process, and then asked me. So I started on a Tuesday. He asked me I think it was Tuesday actually, to come down to his office because he wanted to meet me. Fine. That's part of the description of what I'm supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. So I went into his office, and he started asking about me. And he had heard that I was from New England, and he went to college up at New England. So we started talking about, I went to a prestigious boarding school and a prestigious college, and he was very impressed by that. And he started saying how he was going to help mentor me to become the very best trader, and I could get out of New Orleans and go to New York or Washington, D.C. if I just listened to what he said. So he kind of signed himself up as my mentor, and then went on to tell me how special I was, how different I was than everybody else in the office, how I was meant for great things, and I was so highly educated, and that he was going to be the key really to helping me blow out my career into something great.
Now, being a young woman, I can only imagine that is kind of appealing, right?
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. I thought wow, this is incredible. Like I can't wait to get started and to learn.
Hmm.
And, he had 4 computer screens and every other advisor had 2 computer screens. So I thought, is there something extra sophisticated going on in this office? I'd love to learn
Right.
what it takes to be a great advisor. So you're exactly right, Raquel. It's like you go into that situation and you're just like thinking about how you want to grow your career. And I was such a driven person that I just thought, yes, like I'm a sponge. I want to absorb everything. So he kind of left it at that. And I was a little caught off guard by how much he was complimenting me and saying how different I'm not a person that thinks I am better than anybody else. And so I thought it was kind of odd that he like inflated my confidence so much and was saying how, but he also took the opportunity to say that he also went to college in New England and that we were different and we were better than everybody else in the office. So, and I was a psychology major in college. So there were some red flags going up of like, this is kind of weird. This is like a lot of self promotion, but like self promotion in order to create a bond. But again, I'm taking it at face value. And the interesting thing is my husband had met him because my husband sold mutual funds to financial advisors. And other people had said he was kind of like a weird guy, but nothing more than that. So I leave that day, I don't think too much of it other than he's just kind of an odd guy. And then the next day he comes down to my office and tells me that our mentorship is beginning and that I need to come down to his office and we're going to go through some exercises.
So this is day 2.
This is day 2.
Okay.
So I'm like, what? And I talked to the planner before me and I said, hey, like, what's the deal with this guy? And he was like, oh, and it was a male. And he said, he'll give you a ton of work to do. And my metrics were based on like how many plans I did. So I thought, okay, great. I'll build this relationship and he'll give me plans and then I'll be able to hit all my metrics and then I'll get my bonus and blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
So I go down to his office and he shuts the door and he sits me down. There's like a little table and he sits at his desk and he says, so if you're going to be dealing with a lot of money and learning how to do these, complex investments, you're going to have to learn how to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Fine, weird.
Hmm.
And he just goes on talking about making all these assumptions about me. He was like, you were probably a country club girl. I bet you went off the high dive when everyone else went off the regular diving board. Like just, I don't even know, making weird assumptions. And then he starts getting into, okay, let's do some exercises. So you're going to have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And he said, what would be something uncomfortable that you would do right now, right here? And I
Odd.
was just like, I don't know. And he goes, well, I'm a man, you're a woman. What would be uncomfortable for you to do? And in my head, like even thinking back, like in my head, I just kind of froze. I was just like, I don't know. And he goes, what would a man and a woman do that would be uncomfortable? And I said, I don't know, give you a hug. And he was like, okay, you give me a hug. And he's like, there's glass right here. Everyone can see us. Like you can that would be stepping outside your comfort zone. And he's like, well, what would be really uncomfortable? And I remember saying this response. He said, what would be taking a risk? And I said, taking a risk would be telling you that I want to team up with you when I don't even know you. And because the whole point of my program was that I would become a financial planner and then I would go on to a team and become an advisor on a team.
Okay.
So that was my response. And that wasn't good enough. So he kept pushing me and I didn't say anything more than that. I just felt very weird and uncomfortable. So honestly, like there were a lot of long, awkward silences because I was just like, I don't know where he wants me to take this.
Hmm.
And so it was just a really uncomfortable. I think I was in there for about 45 minutes and it felt like 4 hours. And finally he lets me go and I go back to my desk and he was out on Thursday and Friday. And I remember feeling like a sense of relief that he was gone from the office. And I finally
Hmm.
got to like go around and meet other advisors and start getting to know people. And then the following Monday, he was back from vacation, and that was there was what they call a flash crash. So there was a flash crash in the stock market, and he comes down to my office. It's like, early in the morning. I think it was like 9 o'clock Central Time. Like the market had just opened and it was kind of going crazy. And my manager was in there, and he comes in and he goes, do you want to make the biggest trade of your entire life? And I look at my manager, and my manager's like, sure, you can go for it. Like, he'll teach you how to make a trade in the system. So I follow him down to his office, and he has me sit in his chair, and he's standing weirdly close behind me, guiding me through how to make the trade. So I make the trade, and then he goes, how did that feel? And I was like, cool. Like, he was like, you just traded millions of dollars. And I was like, great. It's the click of a button. Like, there's not that much of a rush that I got from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he goes, we're going to go through another exercise. So I'm like, okay. So I go over and sit at that table again, and he sits in his chair. And it's just a long and torturous conversation. He asked me invasive things. First, he like primes me to get to that place again, like getting mentally to like being comfortable, being uncomfortable. And then he starts asking me weird questions like, does your bra clip in the front or the back? And goes through the man and the woman thing again. And he goes, so what would be, he's like, so we left off at a hug, but he's like, I know you, like, and he goes back to that thing of like, you went to X boarding school and you went off the high dive. Like, you can do this, you can get uncomfortable. So he's like pushing me to take a risk, was how he framed it. And he basically brought it to the point of saying that what I needed to do was get comfortable going into another room and taking my clothes off in front of him, because that was going to create the level of trust that we needed in order for him to make me a great trader. And I said, I will never do that. I said, there's no way I would ever do that. Mm-hmm. And he got really mad, and he said, I don't want you to answer right now. Go back to your desk and think about it. And I was like, I'm not going to go back to my desk and think about it. I don't have to think about it. I would never do that. And then he just went off, and he said, I think he said, I've seen a million little, I don't know if that, do we have an explicit rating on here?
There's no explicit rating. You can be open and honest here on Soul Source.
He said, I've seen a million little titties like yours, and I bet your vagina is nothing special, and I would have given you the best orgasm of your entire life. I would have blown your mind, and you're throwing that all away because you're not willing to take a risk. And he was like, listen to me, how old are you? And I was 24 at the time. He goes, you're only 24 years old. You don't know anything. And just went off describing my body in vile ways, talking about the things that where he would lick me, what he would have done to me. And this whole time there is this glass here. So people are walking by, and I just remember sitting like this, like with my fist in front of my mouth, and tears just rolling down my face because I didn't know what to do. And
I can't only imagine, like, at 24 years old in a new job that's the start of your career, and now this is like happening to you instantly. It's got to be like super terrifying, because you're like, well, this is my chance at like really getting my career started, yet here's this person incredibly overstepping every boundary that exists. So what do you do? What happens?
Yeah, exactly. I remember, so that was in the morning. So we had a lunch meeting, and he kept me in there for like 2 hours. I'm telling you, Raquel, there were like a lot of long, drawn out, awkward silences because I would not say the things that he wanted me to say. And it's hard to describe, but you're in such a state of shock that like, you don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. I think off. I think if I heard the situation before I was in it, I would have thought like, I would have just gotten up and like stormed out of there or like told him to, go like F himself. But when you're in the situation, the reality is like your brain is just trying to process and react and process and react. And I was new there. So that was the other thing. So we went down for the lunch meeting and I was like, thank God. I just had this huge sigh of relief. And he called me back after the lunch meeting. And so I went back after the lunch meeting, but I kept the door open. And he said to me, because I think he got the sense that at some point in time, it was either Monday or Tuesday, he got the sense that I was not just going to like roll over and take this. And at some point in time, he said to me, if you come forward, no one will believe you because you've only been here for less than a week and I've been here for 15 years. And he was right. At the time, like in my mind, he was right. No one knew me. No one knew where I came from. No one knew anything about me. And so I went home I think he did on Monday because I went home that night and my husband and I went to the gym and I just didn't really like say anything at the time because I was trying to digest it. I think I said to Jake in passing on the way to the gym, I was like, have you ever you've met that advisor, right? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, he's a weird guy. And he was like, yeah, he's off. And then we went to the gym and then I just burst out crying and I couldn't work out and I couldn't do anything. And we just went home and I was sobbing and I told my husband everything that had happened. And there were so many other worse things that like, honestly, I just can't even remember at the moment. But he said, you need to report this. And I was like, no, I can't. And I was like, no one knows me. Like, no, I don't know if people will believe me. I was like, what if I lose my job? I just got this job. And he said, he was just like, you have to, this is like outrageous. And so he talked me into going in the next day. He talked me into arranging a meeting with my manager at the Starbucks across the street. And I told my manager everything that had happened. And I'm so grateful. My manager was absolutely incredible. He was like the rock for me the entire time that I was down there, like the entire 4 years that I was down there. So I will say that like every firm, there are some amazing people and he was an incredible person. So I told him and he immediately said, I have to report this and there will be an investigation. And the investigation was terrifying. I mean, I was physically scared for my own safety we were both in the office. So they conducted the investigation and we were both going to work.
Okay. So there's like super awkward vibes going on the whole time.
Yes. And mind you, like I'm only 7 days in. So like I'm going through training in my class. Like I have to just pretend that everything is fine. And still go to the trainings and still try to pay attention to like learning the software and all that stuff while all this is going on in the background. And I had my husband walk me to and from work because I was afraid to be alone, like in and around the building. And I had no idea what was going to come from the investigation. I told them everything and they ended up saying that, so this went on for 2 weeks. I recounted everything. It was just utterly traumatizing. But ultimately that he admitted to what he had said and they ended up firing him. And so he got fired and he moved on to another major bank. Nothing reported on his U4.
So there's no record that this actually happened. He could go to another bank and essentially do this to somebody else.
And allegedly he was at a bank before that and got fired for the same thing.
So when you came forward, did you find out, like, were you like the only one at that bank? Had this happened to other women where you were at?
Well, that's the really interesting thing. So when I came forward, I didn't know anybody, and like I literally didn't know anybody in the office, and I didn't know if anybody else who had reported him. But through the investigation, there was another woman who had filed a complaint a few years before me, and they asked other women in the office if this was consistent with his behavior, and there was enough evidence where HR said this was like one of the most clear-cut cases that they've ever dealt with. So at the time, I did not know that there were other women. However, a year later, there was an advisor in the office who was especially nosy, and ended up, he just needed to know who filed the claim. And I was really angry because the way that I found out about this was an assistant came to my office on a Friday afternoon about a year later. And she said, I was downstairs at the bar last night, and I heard that you were the one that filed the claim that got this advisor fired. And I said, how did you know that? And she said, well, I was in a conversation with two other advisors and one other person. And the advisor said, how long has, that advisor been gone? And another advisor said, oh, well, it has to be at least a year because Kaitlyn only started a year ago. So obviously, so she came to me the next day and she shut the door to my office and she said, I will never be able to thank you enough for speaking up, because she said he tortured me for years. He used to come by my desk and he said, you better come into my office with your titties poking out on your way to jazzercise.
Oh
And
my gosh.
she was a single mother, and there are not that many financial jobs in New Orleans. So she felt like she couldn't leave. And she filed a complaint against him, and they slapped him on the wrist. And then when that happened, he retaliated by coming to her desk and saying, I hope it's okay that I tell you look nice today. And like rubbing it in her face that he won and she lost. So I think that's why he was so confident when he was talking to me that he was untouchable.
You're kind of a trailblazer with this. I mean, especially in the last couple of years, we've got the Me Too movement coming out, and you're hearing more and more stories of women in situations similar to what you just described. If there is a woman out there who, similar to the assistant you said came in, they feel kind of trapped, like they can't talk, they're going to lose their job, there's just too much at stake. What advice do you have for them?
It's always worth it to speak up. I think the thing that I learned, so I tolerated a lot more bad behavior after that incident, which may sound contradictory, but what happened was I didn't want to get a reputation for being that girl that you couldn't. I mean, I have a great sense of humor. I grew up as an ice hockey player. I grew up in a boys' locker room. So I am used to crude language, humor that pushes the boundaries. Like I've always just been like a fun girl with a good sense of humor. So I didn't want to get a reputation for someone that you couldn't joke around with or say anything to, or that wasn't personable. And so I didn't say anything for all that next year. And I ended up putting up with like a lot more things that were said to me. And I think part of that was because I didn't want to get a reputation. And the other part of it was because I thought, I'm an outsider here. I was born and raised in the Northeast, and that's very different than the South, the deep South. So maybe it's a cultural thing and I don't want to overreact. But the thing is, when that assistant came to me on that Friday, I realized that this is not about me. This is about all the women before me and all the women after me. And that advisor might not have gotten fired had there not been other women that were willing to speak up. And I didn't really realize that until that assistant came to me. And I just thought, you know what? Screw it. Like, I'm going to create a paper trail for other women so that when other women come forward, they have a leg to stand on, like I did. Because if I was the first claim to come forward and no one knew me, who knows? He could still have his job. So I would say that whenever you're are scared and you're in a situation where you feel that you could face retaliation, I think it's really important to think about the big picture. And sometimes it even takes like a little bit of dissociation where I think like, yes, it's so hard when it's me personally, Kaitlyn Carlson, but I also kind of look at myself as like a character in a movie, for example. And it's like, you always want to root for that character to like do the right thing and be brave. And it's really hard to do when you feel like everything is on the line, but it's just so important. And I think the thing that gave me the courage to come forward with the other 5 claims after that was just thinking about more than myself, thinking about all of the women that were before me. This advisor who sexually harassed me my first week, he was known for having interns. So I can't even imagine all the interns that came and went that went through this. And I even heard of a couple. So I can't even imagine the women that are traumatized and scarred. And he knew this. He went after people that he thought were weak. And an intern is not going to speak up. An intern's just going to leave. They're just not going to reapply for a job at that firm. So how many women did he deter from going into finance at all?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, it's so hard to get the courage up, but it's always right to do the right thing. And it's always right to tell the truth. And you're not just doing it for yourself. I think my favorite quote, the one by Maya Angelou, is whenever a woman speaks up for herself, she stands up for all women.
And that's happening more and more. As I mentioned, we've got the Me Too movement coming up, and it's been going on now for the last, 2 years, I think, almost. We've been seeing a lot of this. And you hear case after case and it just keeps happening. And you're seeing more like women standing on the backs of other women, I feel like, with this. What are your thoughts seeing all of that, knowing what you've personally gone through and the other women you've met now who have gone through this as well?
Well, I think there's a lot of pain and there's a lot of trauma from essentially the last person to sexually harass me was my partner at the firm who knew what I had been through. And I think that culture thrives because of silence. It thrives in an environment of silence. So it was really, really scary. Like I filed my claim in 2015. So that was before the Me Too movement.
Right.
And I'm just so proud that women have decided to come forward and speak up and get loud, because people's human nature is to normalize things. And a lot of that stuff got normalized because no one was willing to speak up. At least now I feel like it's not just happening to me. Even with that assistant coming to me, so that was in 2016, I still felt like it was only happening to me. Now it feels at least more like I'm not alone. And I buried it for a long, long time. I actually buried it until May of this year.
So this is very recent for you to start talking about this.
Yes. The only reason why I decided to start talking about it is because I'm part of a local women's business network. And I was freaking out because from January, I remember giving birth to my son and thinking, I can't believe I have to make that presentation in May. I don't know what I'm going to say, because I was thinking that I had to like sugarcoat why I started my firm, but I can't explain why I started my firm without talking about this. This is a huge reason why I started my firm. And the other thing I want to say to that point is that I was attaching my success to other people, especially with the partnership that I ended up being in where he sexually harassed me. I was thinking that I needed him to be successful. And so I tolerated his behavior, even after everything that I had been through, for longer than I otherwise would have, because I felt like I needed him for career growth. And now I look at it and it's just so hard, because when you're in your career, you get so myopic and you think this is the only way, this is the only option, this is the only path. And then everything blows up so much that you just end up breaking free of that. And then you think, I can't believe that I gave my power away. I can't believe that I thought that my power was attached to somebody else. So starting theory was a little bit of like taking my power back and thinking like, I still, even after I left that firm, I was still getting into partnerships with men. Like, why was I doing that? I was doing that because I didn't believe in myself. And I had to get pushed to the brink, to the very edge, like literally looking at opening yoga studios because I just thought this industry is going to break me. And I have my husband to thank, who said, you need to bet on yourself and you need to stop giving your power away and you need to start something that's meaningful to you. And he said, who do you love to work with? Who do you love to serve? Like, what would you be happy with? And when I finally answered what that was, the answer was theory.
Wow. Wow. So that, my next question, it's actually a perfect setup for that, because you worked in a very male dominated field, and that I think can cause a lot of doubt for women and make you second guess yourself, because you're like, you always hear that like a woman's got to work twice as hard to be half as good as a man. Right. So like, I'm sure that there was some of that going on in your brain while you're working in this male dominated field. What do you want women to know about working in that kind of an environment? How can they stand out? What should they know about having control of their own power?
Well, so I got told by a lot of people that I would be a great fit for management. But one of the reasons why I didn't want to go into management is because I wanted to control my own destiny. And as an advisor, you can control your own destiny. You can control how much money you make. You essentially have a book of business, a book of clients. And so that was a universe that I could control. I could control how fast I wanted to grow, how many clients I wanted to have, how much money I wanted to make. And it wasn't contingent on subjective things. And so that was my answer in my industry to how to solve that problem. And I know that's not universal. So I would say for the women that are in positions where it is more subjective, I think you have to get really clear on what's important to you. My one regret is that if I took more time to get quiet and do meditative practices and check in with myself and actually care about how I felt and not just push through, I think I would have gotten my answers a lot sooner. But I didn't. I didn't create time and space to ask, what do I want? How do I feel? Like getting home at the end of the day from a day at work, especially with that final advisor that was my partner, like I didn't sit down and think, like, how did that make me feel? And like, that didn't make me feel good. And am I okay with that? Am I willing to put up with that? And the answer is no, but I just kept pushing forward. And I just look back and I just think, I wish I gave myself time and space to reflect and have more flexible thinking. I kind of got this one track mind where I thought, okay, the other thing is I was really homesick. So I felt like, okay, let's just build this thing to where we're successful enough. And then I can move home and then I can start a family. And I got so like one track minded that I wasn't flexible in my thinking. So it's really important to give yourself time and space to listen to yourself, because truthfully, your body is always telling you how you feel. And sometimes you choose to listen and sometimes you don't.
Yes. Cause it's like, I'm sure there was like a slimy feeling going into work all the time. Like it doesn't feel good. And that's all those body signs going off.
Yes. I was having bowel issues. I had tightness in my chest. Yeah. And I just thought, once we get the next client, then it'll be fine. And it's not right. You have to stop and listen to yourself. Yeah.
And you finally did. You started your own company. You're working with some of the most wealthy people in the world. Did you ever think you'd be doing that?
Honestly, no. I had an amazing upbringing. I had a normal middle class childhood. And then because of hockey, I ended up going to like I said, like a very prestigious boarding school. And that was kind of the first time that I got introduced. My sophomore year roommate, I went down to visit her in the summer, and she was neighbors with the Marriotts. And that was
Okay.
the first time that I was introduced to just next level wealth. And I thought, wow, that's so interesting. Like she and I are going to be sharing this same shitty dorm room.
Yeah.
Yet like I'm going home to like a normal house, normal neighborhood, and she's going home to just like this insane mansion. And like how
Hmm.
weird is that? And there were like little things. The other thing is my husband's family, they were farmers from Nebraska, and they ended up selling corn farmland, and they did a 1031 exchange into a condo in Boston. And I
Hmm.
thought that is so cool that you could take like corn farmland in Nebraska and exchange that, like turn that into a condo in Charlestown to avoid taxes. So like there were little things that I thought was really like cool about. I just thought I want to learn all the strategies and then
Hmm.
I want to learn how to apply them. Because another thing when I was in college was like Mitt Romney was running for president, and there was just all of that talk around like how little he paid in taxes. And I thought that was intriguing too, because I thought, well, if he was doing something illegal, he'd be in jail right now. So like, what
Hmm.
is he doing that everyone else isn't doing? And like, can I be mad at him for that? Is he just hiring really smart people to figure out how to pay that tax rate? So it was that. And then finally, like finances were a source of stress in my house. So, and I'm the oldest and I'm sort of like the fixer. So I just felt like, let me figure it all out and then I'll figure out how to fix everything. And so those were breadcrumbs that led me into, and then the final thing was I was a psych major in college. So I felt like I was always passionate about finance. I pictured myself there. I was a psych major in college. Doing wealth management would just be the perfect marriage of the two,
Hmm.
working with people around their money. So I I didn't know what I was getting into. I thought it was just going to be like helping people figure out how to navigate their finances. And then because of the firm that I was at and who I ended up partnering up with, I just got catapulted into the 1% of the 1% and ended up working with private wealth management people, which was really interesting. And so theory now is more about taking all of that knowledge and expertise that I learned from working with the 1% and teaching women who are self-made and growing, thriving businesses. And typically you have to have at least $10 million to get access to that service and those strategies. I want to
Hmm.
help women who are doing amazing things and bring those strategies to them early so I can teach them how to grow wealth.
Because you're trying to help get women into that top 1%. Because right now, that's not a very large chunk of women are up in that level, are they?
Almost none. So it's like I'm coming to them to teach them how to get into that 1%.
What is that like for you?
It is so fun. My husband's like, you created your dream job. And I did. Like, it's just so cool that I can have all these fun conversations with, he calls them my girl crushes, like all of my girl crushes, which is true. And it's exciting. And I just feel comfortable. And I was just so uncomfortable for so long.
Hmm.
And uh, I'm just, I'm so grateful to my husband. And I'm just really glad that I stuck with it because it was totally worth it. And that's advice to anybody out there. You can make what makes you happy work. It takes a little bit of, my 20s were also spent doing a lot of studying and a lot of preparing to get myself to this situation. It's not like I graduated from college and then just bam, I'm running a wealth management firm. I did have to invest a lot of time studying and getting my credentials. But to sum it up, I would say it's rewarding.
Yeah. And tell me a little bit about this company you started, Theory Planning Services. I mean, you kind of marry a whole bunch of different things about a person's life because finances are just one piece and you've got the business, the financial, and the personal. How do those all come together and how are you helping women?
So one of the things that I felt when I was in wealth management that wasn't great was I didn't feel that wealth management served business owners very well. And it was based off of one situation in particular. We were working with a business owner who ran an $80 million business. And by the time I got to working with him, his bank had fired him. His son was going to sue him for hostile takeover. He had a $25 million insurance policy that had a lien against it from that bank. So when the bank fired him, all of these domino pieces started falling and they were threatening his business. And then his financial advisor at the time was just a stock picker. So, and this gentleman had also paid a consultant $100,000 to come in and basically got nothing out of it. And his CFO was embezzling from him.
Oh my goodness. Poor guy.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, he became so successful because he was great at what he did. So his success and wealth was a byproduct of his passion. And that didn't mean that he was automatically going to be equipped to manage the success that he had created. And when I saw that, I felt a couple things. I felt, one, this man needs an advocate and a protector. And no one that was in his life or sphere was financially motivated to fill that role for him. Because the insurance agent made $1 million commission off of selling the $25 million policy. The financial advisor, the business owner, only had $1 million with him, which was low on the totem pole for wealth management. So he wasn't very motivated to go above and beyond to serve him. And he was just bouncing from professional to professional with no cohesive vision or plan. So, and I could only help him so much when I was at the bank, because we really only speak to the personal side of a business owner. Yet a business owner's best opportunity for wealth creation is their business. So all of these people needed to be talking, and no one was facilitating the conversation, and no one was really taking the reins on quarterbacking that process. So when I left the bank and when I left my previous partnerships, I thought, I really want to be like a full service solution and helping business owners quarterback that process. And basically, I would be the person that takes the reins on making sure that all of those professionals are coordinating. So now with my clients, I meet with their CPA and bookkeeper regularly. We will get a valuation done on the business. I talk to them about what they want to do after the business, because that was one of the things that I saw too, is that yes, money is important, but purpose is more important. And it's especially hard for business owners when they sell their business, because they lose a big chunk of their identity. And no one understands that more than a business owner. So that was another thing. I felt like I was giving advice to business owners as an employee, and that was hard for me. I needed to actually sit in the seat of a business owner. And now I really understand, like, your business is your baby and how much you care about it and the attachment that comes with that. So I really try to take like a very holistic approach to the business owner balance sheet, and also like the business owner as a person.
And so, for women out there listening, I want them to understand, like, they don't have to be these rich women to be working with you, correct?
Correct. So that's one thing that's very different about me. So I charge a flat fee for my services because I want it to be accessible. I tend to find that women who are at or past the 7-figure mark tend to be the best for that fee, because it's a premium fee. But the big thing is, women do not have to have anything in investable assets to start with me. They can have $0 in a retirement account. They can have $0 in an investment account. One of my most successful clients had $500 in an Acorn account.
Okay.
And she'll be worth 7 figures within 3 years.
Holy cow. Wow. That's like a true Cinderella story right there.
Yes. So I appreciate you asking that, because I always forget to mention that. But yes, you do not need to have any assets personally. It's more about where you are in your business owner journey. And typically high 6 into 7 figures experiencing rapid growth is typically when I tend to be of the most help.
So we kind of covered a lot of ground today. And you're not only a resource for women if they want to get in touch with you for the financial piece and growing their wealth, but also you're also, maybe a listening ear or a fellow woman who's felt the pain of these sexual assaults and abuses that happen. So if women are in either boat, they want to either connect with you on that and just have another person to talk to, or somebody who is looking to grow their wealth, how can they find you? How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah. So the best way to get in touch with me is to go to my website, theoryplanning.com, and you can book a call with me. And I would be happy to get to know you over 30 minutes or so. I always say that whether I'm the right fit or someone else is, I will help you find the right fit if you're looking for financial advice. If you want to vent about male-dominated industries, then I'm also your go-to girl. And then I am also on Instagram as well at KMCarlson13.
Perfect. I will make sure we have those links posted in our show notes here for anybody listening, watching, they want to get a hold of you. Kaitlyn, seriously, thank you. I am so impressed with you, all that you've accomplished and overcome. Thank you for sharing that story with us today.
Thank you, Raquel. It was so fun. And I told you before, it was a sensitive topic and you just made me feel so comfortable talking about it. So I was glad to share.
Thank you for listening. And if you want to hear more Soul Source, just subscribe to our show. We're available wherever you listen to podcasts. And you can watch us too. We're on YouTube. Just look for Soul Source. Soul Source is brought to you by Red Shoes Inc., a leading agency specializing in crisis and strategic communications, media relations, social media, and so much more. To learn more about Soul Source and Red Shoes, visit us at redshoesinc.com.